Hi and welcome back to another video of JPlay. I am Marcus, and as you can see today it's all about Lacrimosa, which is pretty much the last thing that Mozart ever wrote in his entire life, and it's part of the Requiem in D minor, which is something that we are trying to complete in this game. The game comes with a solo mode where we are playing against Schikaneder here, who happens to be a friend of the family actually. He wrote the Magic Flute together with Mozart. There's a nice backstory in the rules here, by the way. So I'm not feeling very confident playing against him because, yeah, he seems to be a pretty cool guy, at least for Constanze Mozart, who in fact gave us the, let's say, commission to finish the Requiem in D minor. And we are now again, playing against Schikaneder, who also tries to basically complete this one. Ultimately, we are pretty much trying to get the most amount of victory points out of this. This is the deck of solo cards here. There is an easy, a medium, and a difficult level from what I understood. I only played this game once in multiplayer mode, so we are playing solo against Schikaneder on the easy level of things. So let's see how things go. In respect to the solo mode, it's more or less a two-player game. There are some minor changes in respect to the components that are available to you. The game comes with 4 different composers who you can use throughout the game to, basically you commission a piece of the Requiem. In the end, so you have them write. We are not really composers, we are more like sponsors or so. And in a normal, let's say 2, 3, 4 player games, you always choose 2 out of those 4. In a solo game, you're only using 1 of those. This is the one I have drawn randomly, Freistädtler. We are also not removing any of those Requiem tiles here. Also, you are somewhat reducing that depending a little bit of the amount of players in the solo mode. All of those tiles are available for each and every composer, and the number per movement is always a little bit different depending on who you're using with, but that's the setup for the solo mode. Apart from that, it's really more or less a 2-player game. Yes, of course, the AI or Schikaneder here has their own little rules and twerks and so on, but we are basically really playing a normal 2-player game, and then he will simply mess with us one way or the other. One thing I should notice, this is the finance track of Schikaneder. In the easy level, he's also starting with 0, and I think that could become important. Okay, this is the setup for a 2-player game here. So we are looking at the map of mainly Austria, a lot of Germany, and a little bit of the UK, London up here. Setup for a 2-player game isn't really different to a 3 or 4-player game. And again, in the solo mode, we are more or less playing a 2-player game. The only thing that you do skating wise is removing some of the cards here just to bring the, not really the timer down, but I think it's more in respect to the odds that you get some, let's say, the cards out that you need, because you don't want to end up in a situation where you only have one type of cards up here. And up here we do have 2 different kind of cards. We have the action cards, so we already start the game with 9 of those action cards, and you always will have 9 cards at your, let's call it, disposal to some extent. So whenever you are taking one of those cards, one of our cards has to be removed from the game. That's true for those action cards or memory cards, I believe. That's that, and I will explain you all those actions what to do. And the other type are those opera cards here. That's the opus, which we are trying to, I don't know, we can perform it or we can sell it, depending if we need some quick money or if you want to get some victory points. And typically you want to hold on to those operas here. There's a lot of these royal court tiles refer to those, and these are all end of game victory scoring. So for this card here alone, for example, if we have these 3 types of opera in front of us, we will score 5 victory points for that. But again, that's the main distinction between those 2 card types. These are the memory action cards, and this is the opus, which we can use to perform. And these are all very famous pieces by Mozart. So very late game is the Magic Flute, for example. I think it's in 5 and will score you an incredible amount of victory points. But yeah, that's that. We as the, let's say, real solo player will always go first. Normally this then goes around in circles. We will always be the starting player, which is something I think might be necessary, as some of those card combinations can be extremely brutal. So he could, for example, trigger a movement action, which is then ultimately cleaning out the board with one go, for example. So if we really want to go places like Frankfurt here, getting this bonus early on, that's an extra income which we get basically for the rest of the game. So this is huge, or can be huge at least. We want to make sure we are moving first, but that's now a little bit depending on which cards we drew from our starting hand of 9 cards. I haven't checked those yet, so let's wait and see. This is our starting money, this is our starting income. Unlike the Chicaneda player, the AI, we start already with 2 on our finance track. Again, if you would play against a difficult, they would also start on 2, but I think that's a bad thing. These are our story point tracks here. I think this is Mozart talents, this is travel, and this is our writing capabilities or so. Pretty much another currency. So we have, I would say, 4 currencies in the game. 3 are those story points, and the 4th one is money in this case. We will play in each of our player turns 2 cards. One goes on top, one goes to the bottom. Whatever we play up here, this is defining the action. Everything that we'll put down here is something that we typically gain as some kind of an income towards the end of the round. We do that 4 times. Basically playing for all of our, let's say, 8 of our 9 cards. So we will see all the cards sooner or later, but of course we don't know when they're coming out. And we do this then 5 rounds. So one round again consists of 4 of those cards, or 8 of those cards to be played. Multiply that by 5, and that then defines the end of the game. I have no clue what we can do because I haven't checked out those action cards. So let's see what we have at our disposal. So I already see that we have 2 travel cards here, and I think that might be a good one. Apart from that, we do have a Requiem action. Not a Requiem action, sorry, that's a Opus action, so we can commission an Opus. This is the Requiem action. The travel one now is pretty interesting, and I think that's the action that we are going to take. And again, the action that we are going to take has to go into this first slot here, and this works pretty nicely actually. I love dual layered boards, and they work pretty well. The only downside here is you can't put in sleeved cards. That's really a bummer. On the other hand, the card quality of those cards is really pretty good. Unfortunately, we also have to play a card down here. The question is, which card do I want to bury down here? Let's say I would go for this card here. This says, okay, I have 2 travel cards. I know that. All of the actions are twice in the deck. The only thing which we only have once is the story action, where we get more action cards. That's the only card that we only have once. So if we want to do something like this, for example, we know that we will not travel again in this entire round, which might be good and bad, of course, but I think doing this travel action first is nice. If we would have, or if we want to maximize the so-called period bonus tile here, and these are also put in randomly. For each period we have 3 different tiles, so this really changes from game to game, which is something I absolutely enjoy. And this one says for each coach action we see at the end of the round, we will score 1 victory point. So in this case, I could really debate to travel twice. So basically playing this card in here later on in my next action, that is, then we would score 2 points instead of 1. But that's really not the ultimate thing to do, quite honestly, because this would then mean that we would keep this card and would have to get rid of one of the other cards and put it basically on, because that's really what you have to do. 1 card goes here, 1 card goes there. Once you have done that selection, then you get to take the actual action instead. So I think, looking at the board, I don't know that I want to do that, but I really want to travel to Frankfurt. I think that's the most important thing. So we will stick to the plan, and it will make sense, believe me. So this will be my first action of the game. We are playing this as the action, and this goes down here to, there's a name for this thing down here. Here are the story cards, or the memory cards for that, and this is the story section on the board. So up here is our experiences section. Again, this is where we are playing our actions. And down here we have our story sections, which ultimately translate into story points at the end of the round. With later cards we may also get victory points from that, for example. I think there is also one that gives you, does it give you? No, I think it's mainly victory points and story points that you can get through the story section down here. But yeah, let's now trigger our movement action. At the start of the game, this Mozart figure starts in Salzburg. Makes sense, right? And we can pretty much travel anywhere if we're paying for that. And you see the money that's printed on these road spaces here. So in order to move from Salzburg to Munich, we would have to pay 1 ducat. Respectively. We can also spend no ducats and stay where we are and take this action here. That's also fine, of course. If there is nothing left to gain there is no point taking that action. But again, we can also move much further, and I think that's what I want to do, because again, there is a very, very tasty reward here in Frankfurt in order to move there. And I really do apologize, but in respect to table real estate, I was not able to bring this map or the game board out in the normal orientation. I personally hate that. I can play that way, that's not a problem, but really showing the game to you is really difficult. So I will try my best to still show you most of the stuff. So yeah, I think let's totally move there. So we are moving 1 and 2 spaces here from Salzburg to Frankfurt. And in order to do that, we have to spend 2 ducats, which for now is okay, as we started the game with 10. But money can be tight at times, especially early game. But yeah, I think this was still necessary. In Frankfurt now, we want to deal with this city tile here. And in order to do that, we have to pay a cost. Everything that you see in red is something that you have to pay. In this case, it means we have to spend 1 story point, and this needs to come from the travel story track. This can be from our track, and we start the game on the position 2 on each of those tracks. So in this case, we would have to spend 1 of those. Alternatively, we could have also spent 1 of those story discs. Right now we don't have those discs in here, and the main difference between, let's say, these tracks here and those tokens is that you can hold on to the tokens from round to round. Everything that you have left over at the end of the round will reset down to 0. Then you will check what income you will generate from your story cards that you have played down here in the story section of your player board, and this will then be the starting point for the next round to come. So whenever you can, you should most likely start spending from the track here instead. Right now we don't have a choice anyway, because we don't have those tokens or those discs here. In this case, we have spent our journey point, which means we are taking this tile here respectively, and the only thing that it does is to increase our finance track by 1, which is huge, or it can be huge. Right now we basically going from 2 money income to 3 money income. We also get 1 story income at the end of the round, but the higher we get, we could even start generating victory points out of this, or even more money. Again, money can be somewhat tight, but for now this thing is out of the game, which means there's nothing left to do in Frankfurt. Don't believe that for a second. Frankfurt is an amazing town. There's always stuff to do. For sure. Yeah, but that's basically the end of our action. We cannot move on, and we can also not trigger anything that we have moved over. Only thing that counts is the location where we ended our journey here, but that's already the end of our turn. So let's move over to Schikaneda. Or before we do, let's not forget to draw 2 more cards. That's basically what this handy dandy overview tells us to do. So we are drawing 2 more cards for our next turn to come. So here we can start working or performing or selling an opus, which again, we are starting with an opus down here. This is an action we already have seen here. That's basically getting more opus cards into our personal display. I was really hoping for an action card, quite honestly, but that's something that is still somewhere here in the deck. But now let's move over to our AI player and let's see what he does. Again, works pretty much the same way as with us. We are drawing 1 card that goes to the top of the board. That's an interesting one. So he's trying to perform, and here I'm not really sure. Let's see. I think this is the one piece I have to check, and one goes basically to the bottom. This is somewhat of the programming thing, which tells you which actual action he's taking once he is taking that action. And depending on which action it is, we will go from top to bottom, from left to right. We will go for the fourth position. So these cards come with a relatively good amount of information. But in this case, the first thing that we have to check is the action that Shikaneda is interested in. In this case, it's all about an opus card. He doesn't really collect those opera. He is looking at the cards that are available on the main game board. So now we know what he is going to do. Next, we have to check where he is going to do that. And this is coming, basically we have 3 columns here, and depending on which action you're looking at the column respectively. For this kind of action, we are looking at the leftmost column. We are looking at which direction the arrow is pointing. In this case, it means it's the leftmost one. So looking at the main game board, this is the Dominicus Messe here. This is basically, that's the one that he is immediately trying to sell. He will never perform, so he's not looking at this. He's greedy. He wants to get money, and he wants to give the money to Constanze Mozart. So don't get me wrong, he's a kind guy. So we're doing that. He's never spending any story points, money whatsoever. He always gets those. And in this case, we are looking at the reward on the right-hand side. We are not increasing the income. That's at least something. But he will immediately score his very first 2 victory points. Hooray, already in the lead, running away with the game. This card is basically removed from the game. We are immediately revealing a new one. And in this case, it's another action card. And depending on what type of card it is that you are revealing, you're either bringing out this way or that way. Again, those action cards will always, or memory cards will always shift up, because this is when you see the price for this card. So in order to get this action card, you have to spend 4 ducats and 2 of those story markers. This can be any story markers. And on the other hand here, the opus card is telling you what additional story points you have to spend for this particular kind of opus. In this case, it's 2 extra blackish story points, plus the one that are printed on the cards here respectively. But that's already the end of his action, so I think I'm okay with that, quite honestly. So let's move back to our player board and think about our next action. And I'm also thinking about an perform or selling action, which again is this one here. I think I want to increase my income even more, because again, I think that's the better deal. Let's do that. So we are going for the same action here. We unlike Shikaneda, actually do have a choice here. We can either perform or we can sell. But of course, first of all, we also have to identify a card that goes down here. And I think we don't need 2 opus cards this first round of the game. So let's move this down here again. And this is increasing our story points income at the end of the round. Yeah, let's do that. And now again, we have to make a choice what we want to do with this card. And by the way, there is always a choice to completely ignore your normal action. So we can say this is basically a plank card and trigger this alternative action here. And this gives you some ducats depending on which round you're in. Right now we are in round 1. So we are still in this first, let's call it era or so. That's definitely not our best bet at this point in time. No, we will definitely do our action. And looking at our one and only opus card here, Nannerl Notenbuch, zweites Menuett. Nice. We can now again either perform. This means we can hold on to this card. So this is a good thing, gives you good amount of money, but you can only use it once per round. This will then untap at the end of each round in the maintenance phase, but we are still 2 cards away from that. Or we can simply sell this card. And in order to sell this particular card, we have to spend 1 black story point. But we will increase our income once more. And I think that's what we are going to do here. So let's spend our black story markers. And we want to spend those because, again, they are not good to us anyway. If we are then later on, we will reduce them down to 0 anyway at the end of the round. So better spend those before we are not using those. But again, we have sold this piece, which means it's out of the game, but we are also increasing our income by 1 more step this way. I really kind of like this, but this card is also out of the game. We cannot use it ever again, but I'm still okay with that. And that's already also the end of our action. Let's draw 2 more cards before I forgot. Okay, that's the action where we get more memory cards. That's the one I was waiting for. And then on top of this we have another one. And I think this is now kind of perfect actually, that we can use this card and basically spend this card, because right now there is no Opus card in front of us which we could use. So I think this worked out okay. But that's our turn. Let's move back to Chicaneda. Again, one card goes in here. Okay, in this case he will grab an Opus card and he will use this. Oh, this is okay. He's not traveling. Oh, I don't know if I like that or not. But once again, we are looking at this symbol here. He's going for an Opus card. And again, we are looking at the leftmost column here. And again, he will start from the left on the main game board. So the leftmost Opus card is this one here. Again, he's not spending any money or story points or whatsoever. He's simply claiming this card here. He will immediately score the points for this card, and then this card is out of the game. But of course, with that he will advance to 4 victory points here already. Hooray. Again, this card is out of the game. This will move down. We are revealing a new card, and that's another Opus card which goes in here. Sonaten für Klavier und Violine. How lovely. And that's a cool one, because again, for 0 points we could gain 3 ducats. That's not nothing. And getting this card here also costs us something. I mean, that's 3 and 2, but also 3 immediate victory point. That's again not nothing as well. But that's again already the action of Chicaneda, and I already told you this in a lot of other videos. I like it when let's say a solo AI deck is really easy to follow, and so far it seems relatively easy. Things get a little bit tricky when Chicaneda is starting to travel, and I think when he's also going for this memory action here, then things could get also a little bit messy. But yeah, let's wait and see. For now, it's our turn. And again, I do think we want to strengthen something. The question now really is what it is. And again, we have to look at the action cards that are available here. I'm not sure if I would be okay. I would have really loved to gain, I don't know, an upgraded memory card, for example, for, I don't know, for what? Maybe for the Requiem action also, because that's the one I'm still debating if I want to take that or not. On the other hand, upgrading this one here is also not bad, because yeah, it gives us a lot of points actually. So yeah, let's stay on target and go for the, I think it's the document memories action. So we are placing this card down here. And now this is important, because whatever card we are placing down here now, this is the card we are then replacing it with the card we are getting from the main game board. Not this one, it will be this one down here. And again, I'm a little bit reluctant to replace one action card for another action card. So when I, for example, would place this card down here, I know this is out of the game, I would love to have basically getting the same action back again. Later on we have cards that show 2 action types, for example. You get 2 actions out of this. In this case it's also getting stronger, but I do not want to replace this action type with this action type, at least not yet. So I guess I'm okay not taking another Opus action this round, so we will place this card down here. So this will be removed from the game. But now we get to choose which card to get. And again, as we basically removing this icon type here, I think I want this card. I don't want to replace this with that. At least I think for now. So we have to spend 1 ducat, that's fine, and any 1 story point. And in this case, I do not think that it matters too much. I guess we are going for this one, just to keep things even. And for now, we will not spend more than that. No, that's okay. So again, we are grabbing this card. We will remove the card that we placed down here. So normally what you typically do when you are getting a little bit more experience with the game, if you know you're removing it, you're not sliding it down here, of course, but we are replacing it with this one. So now we have increased our plaque story input or income by 2, basically. With this card, this would have been 1. With this card, this is 3. So that's definitely massive. but that's already the end of our action. We are drawing our last and final card. So for the last action of this round, we only have 3 cards available, and this is telling you basically this is a very nice player board. Actually works very well, I must say. I have had some problems with the rules. Some things are a little bit unclearly worded, some things are a little bit left out. I think 90% is fine, but there are some ambiguities in the rules. But of course the fine folks on the Geek and the designers or publishers are really very responsive there and typically helping us there. But this player board here really works very well. Again, the only thing which I would have loved if they would have allowed us to use sleeved cards in here. Maybe my sleeves are a little bit too large, I don't know what it is, but I'm really a sleever. Okay, before we move back to Chicanida, let's slide everything over. Of course, they will remain in their relative positions here. We will reveal a new card, and that's another action card. That's a very nice one. Travel plus money. So you get the money first and then you travel. This gives you maybe the money that you need for the roads. That's really a massive card. I believe I had this during my last game and it was invaluable. But okay, let's move back to Chicanida and let's see what crazy things he does. So, okay, yeah, that's the story thing that I was telling you about. So he's definitely not traveling this round. I believe he also has the tricycle. I don't really know what cards are in his deck. Maybe I should have checked that. But again, we are looking at the card. Again, he's going for an action or memory card in this case. And again, he will go for the leftmost one. So much, or so far, so simple. Let's look at the leftmost action. Of course, we shouldn't be surprised as we just revealed it. So he's going for this card. That's the leftmost card. So he's removing that. The problem is he's not just removing it, he's also triggering all the actions on this card. And this can be brutal, really brutal. If there would have been any victory points down here, he would score those, but there aren't any victory points and he doesn't really care about those story points. And he also doesn't get the money up here, so he's totally fine. But he will remove this card from the game, that's the one thing, but he will also trigger the journey action or the movement action on the board. So I was saying he's not going to travel, but here this was an outright lie. He's traveling with this action card here. So in this case we have to also consult the AI card down here respectively. So in this case it's the middle column here for the travel action, and this says basically upwards by 1, which doesn't mean he's moving 1 space. He's moving upwards, so this is where those numbers comes into play, but the number tells us how many of those royal court tiles he is taking away, and in this case it's only 1 and we are moving upwards. So it's kind of a dodge the bullet situation. He will move to London, so that's already a bad thing. He will not spend any money for that, but he will immediately stop. He will always move from the current location to the next royal court tile. Every city tile that he's moving through, he will simply remove those from the board. So this can become relatively brutal. That's the one piece which is very unclearly written in the rules. But I think after reading some rule or some threads on the Geek, I think I understood it, and I hope I'm really playing this correctly now. If not, let me know and I will try to correct that a little bit sooner. But what this means is he will take this away from us and he will score those 7 points at the end of the game. He doesn't care about any of those conditions here. He will simply score 7 points at the end of the game, and it's also taking this away from us. And right now Mozart here, or our travel marker, is on a, let's say, relatively tough spot. So for us to move out of here, it's quite expensive to move from London to Frankfurt or from London to Paris, for example. And that's definitely kind of a tough spot, but that's basically the end of his action. We are removing this card from the game. Of course, normally this would have moved into the player's hand, but again, he doesn't care about hands. And here we have another opus, Salzburger Sinfonia. That's a famous one. Wow, that's not inexpensive, but it also comes with a very nice, wow, we could gain 2 victory points and 1 income. That's a massive one. Let's really try to get this sooner or later. I do like that. Okay, but that was his action. Back to us, and we are triggering the last action of this round. And there is not an awful lot to choose from. So first of all, yeah, this one here. The problem now really is, I think I need also white story markers sooner or later. So I will go for a Requiem action. I think this much is clear. And we will place this one in here just to make sure that we get some steady income for the end of this round in respect to those story markers here. Having 0 in one could be really detrimental, I guess. And this is the card that we have to carry over to the next round. So when we start the next round, we will draw back up to 4 cards. But again, we have to, this card will stay here. So we are drawing 3 more cards, basically. That's what it means. Okay, that's the Requiem action. I think that's more or less the last thing to show you. I like that. Okay, that's working out okay, actually. And this is the section of the board that we are dealing with right now. These markers here, and I think I put them onto in a random and very strange orientation for some of those. This is some kind of a randomizer. So yeah, I think there are 5 of those Constanze cards in the game, and they tell you, depending on the player count, how many of those you are covering up. Nicely done. Very confusingly written in the rules, and I'm still not 100% sure if I understood this correctly, but I think I'm okay. So I will leave the card here. So now you can stop the video and let me know if I did that correctly. If not, let me know and maybe try to explain to me how it's actually working. But I think I'm okay. Overall, we are really trying to make things a little bit tighter depending on the player count. So I think in a 4-player game, for example, we're only covering up these 3 instruments in each of those movements here. For a 3-player game, we are adding 2 more that we are covering up. And in a 2-player game, we are adding 3 more into the mix just to make things a little bit tighter. That's the overall idea. And I like the randomness of those cards, and you have to really address the situation each time you play. Now we have to choose which movement we are going for. This one is a nice one. The problem is the trumpets here, they're already completely covered, but they give you a steady income of story points at the end of each round. So that could be a nice one to gain, and we could also make sure, no, we are not getting any money for this. The other cool piece is the Sanctus section of the Requiem, where we can really score the most amount of points. That's basically how I won the last game, by the way, is by really flooding this one here. They completely let me go, and I think I scored 21 points just from this section here alone. And I think this catapulted me somewhere else. The thing is, early game, I want some extra income. This one here is really, really massive, actually, because this gives you extra actions, depending on which action you take. So this topmost here, for example, gives you an extra opus action whenever you're triggering an opus action. This can be nice. But for now, I'm really tempted to go for the Sequentia and basically unlocking this one here. So we 1 and 1. And this is really now the toughest part, but I think as we are still so early game and we have 2 sections here, I think I am okay not doing this just yet. So no, we will go for this section here. This is also something that works a little bit different compared to a normal 2, 3 or 4-player game, because in a 2-player game I will always, let's say, support the only composer that is here, whereas Schikaneda will more or less play against me here. So which instruments are we going to place? And right now we have 2 drums, we have 2 violins, and we have the organ, right? So which one to go for? Looking at the board, does it matter too much? Does it matter? I don't know. But of course I will go in here. So that much is clear. So in order to get this tile here, so this is what it cost me to write this piece of the Requiem, we have to spend this. So 1 Mozart talents, I believe, or writing capabilities or whatever it is, and 3 ducats. And it will get more expensive the deeper we go. The next time we would go there, we would have to spend 4 ducats instead. But that's 3 for now. So let's spend that here accordingly. So we have to spend the 5 getting 2 back. So we are down to 4 ducats. That's really not great. So we have spent this, and then we have to also spend 1 of these white story points. The question now really is which instruments. I would have loved to go for the trumpet here, because it would have given us 2 immediate ducats. All the others, I think, doesn't really matter. I'm not really fancying the victory point at this point in time. So the organ, I think, in this case, I want to go, I guess, for a violin or a trumpet, because this would give us 1 of those discs instead. So see, that's a disc. It's really not showing a cube, it's a disc. So that's something that we can carry over from round to round. But I get a lot of black, so I don't need the violin. That much is clear. So it's either the red or the white one. And I think we will go for the drum, because we have more violins than drums, I guess. So yeah, we will take this tile and replace it here with a drum. So this goes in here, And this one says me that during the maintenance phase, this is stage 3 of the game, we are getting one, not really a wild card, we can choose one of those story points to get during income, so that's cool. Now we have to bring this one to this side. In the solo game, we are only using this side, that's the 8th node of the side, that's the 16th node. That's really something of, let's call it area majority part of the game, but again, we are only playing against one solo player, so let's take this one and place it into the movement that we have commissioned the composer from. And again, we went for a drum, right? So we have to go for this or that. It doesn't matter if it's left or right, but we have to go for a drum. At the end of the game, we are checking each of those movements here on the board and checking if we see more 8th notes than we would see in 16th notes. And that's basically telling us who gets the basically bigger amount of victory point. If we have more of those 8 notes, this means we will get 4 victory points for each marker that is in this section of the board. And again, the AI player will always score against us. We'll play against him, this one here, and he will try to get more of the 16th note into the movement here in order to that he will score the 4 points. We will always get the lower amount of points, so that's already good, so we are not losing any points, but of course we ideally want to win. 2 versus 4 is definitely not insignificant. But that's basically how this works. We have basically gotten a composer tile, which will give us some ongoing income, which is a good thing. And we will definitely score 2 points for this at the end of the game, and ideally maybe even 4. That would be nice. But that's basically the end of my action. Sorry for the long talk, but I think this is by far the most, let's call it, complex, and also comes with a lot of decision making in respect, where do I go, which instruments do I go for, what bonus do I want, and so on. And later on, let's say when you play a normal multiplayer game, you even have 2 of those composers to choose from, so there's also even more decision making in this one here. But again, that's us. Let's move back to Shikaneda. Oh, he will also go for a Requiem action. Okay, that's an interesting one, and he will do that in 5. Do I like that or not? I think 5 is okay because it's not scoring extremely well. But basically we are looking at this number here, or the rightmost column here for the Requiem action on his solo card. And we are looking at the 5th movement here, which is the Agnus Dei. And then we will go for the bottommost available instrument, which in this case is the organ. So he will use his organ marker on this space here. So this will score him 1 point right off the bat. He's not taking any composer tiles away from me. He's not covering anything on his board. So I think he's not scoring the 1 victory point from the organ. So that's at least a good thing. But he will also immediately score the lower amount of victory points for that. That's basically an immediate bonus for him, which brings him to 5 points already. It's not looking good, guys. Okay, but that's basically the end of a full round. So we are now moving into the maintenance phase. And again, our player board helps us to deal with that. First of all, we will deal with our story tracks, which means we are moving these down to 0. Hooray. Yeah, not really hooray, but I will still take it. Then we are checking the story section of our board here. So we will get 1 red, we will get 1 plus a 4 black ones, so that's really nice, and we will get 1 white one here, so not too bad. But let's not forget that we will also gain the period bonus. No, that's not the period bonus. That's the composer rewards, exactly. That's now the next thing, and so we get to choose which one to go for. And right now I'm not 100% sure if I want to travel this round or if I maybe want to go for this one here instead. I think I want to do, that's now tricky. That's really tricky because, again, a lot of these Requiem actions are this one here, but I'm not sure if I will go for another Requiem action anytime soon. Maybe, but the traveling will be so expensive. Let's do it. Let's go for the travel actions. And because we get one here, I completely forgot that, so sorry for my long ramble. Then we will check the finances, so we will get 4 money. That's really great. I totally take that. We will get 1 victory point. Hooray, we are on the board. So that's our very first victory point. Yeah. But of course, we will also get another wildcard reason. In this case, we will go for the white one here. That's why I'm saying, okay, it doesn't really matter too much. So staying here on this level is really not bad. This one here could be huge, of course, but I will take it. Nice stuff. Then we check the period bonus, which is this one up here again. For each coach we see on our main game board, unfortunately this is only one, we will score an additional victory point, but I will take it again. This is something where Schikaneder is not going through any steps of the maintenance phase. Even if his board would have shown a coach, as far as I understood, he's not scoring any points or bonuses from that. Next we do the cleanup, which means we're removing all those cards, we are shuffling them together. Again, we will draw up to 4 cards. This card needs to go into our hand, so this would be the cleanup step. I think I will do that off camera. Then we will deal with the main game board. First of all, we will deal with the map. First of all, we will rotate everything or flip to the other side each of the tiles that are still currently on the board. They still show the, let's say, more or less same reward, but they come with a, let's say, somewhat stronger immediate bonus. So that's definitely a good thing, and they will remain on this side until they are claimed. And then we are refilling everything else with the tiles in here. So that's okay. So this one basically tells me that we have to have, let's say, an opus from era 3 and era 5, and this will then score 3 points. We only have to have those. We don't need to whatever perform those, but we are not allowed to sell those, obviously. So that's basically the map action. And then last but not least, we are dealing with the card section of the board. This one is simply removed from the game. We will see something else in a moment. The rightmost, oh, how was it? Was it rightmost 4th or, it's bad. I should know this, I should know this. 4 cards located in the spaces farthest to the right. These are also removed from the game. That's a pity, but that's life. Everything else will slide over. That could be good and bad. All the cards that are still on top of the next period bonus token are also removed from the game. So we are immediately moving into round 3 of the game. So we are revealing, oops, this one here. Okay, this gives you 1 black disc for each opus action that we see. And then from the stage 2 cards that are now in here, we are now revealing new cards. This is another opus. This is another action card. Oh, that's a double action card. You see that here it comes with 2 symbols. That's massive. It's another opus card and another action card. So those actions getting stronger the longer the game goes. But of course, this also means if the AI Schikaneder is taking one of those cards, he will also trigger both of those actions. So this can be massive. But yeah, that's basically the end of the round. Again, I will remain the starting player. In a normal multiplayer game, the starting player token would move to the player to the right, to the left, sorry. But in this case, I will always be the starting player. But I think that I will call it for today. I really do hope I haven't messed things up too badly. Please let me know if I did, and then I will try to correct that in my next video of the gameplay. Again, I leave it up to you if you want to see more. Again, you have seen, I think now, all of the actions that the game has to offer, so that's a good thing. Of course, you haven't seen really any scoring in here, and I'm really eager to keep playing this solo experience here because I quite like that. Yeah, I think again some of the rules are a little bit ambiguous, and I wasn't sure when I first read it, but I think I have covered it quite well. If not, this would now be the time for you to let me know that I didn't understand them properly, so let me know. Again, a huge shout out to all of my patrons and channel members, from which I have basically gotten a new microphone. So if you heard anything weird today, blame it on no, I'm really totally appreciating all your support. You make it possible for me to really improve my stuff, getting more games on the table. So again, really appreciate it. If you want to support my little channel, you will find a link to my page on Patreon. You can directly join me here on YouTube. There is this little thanks button beneath the video where you can leave something in the tip jar. Always appreciate it. But of course, it also greatly helps if you just leave a like, a comment, or subscribe to my channel. And yeah, with that being said, hope to see you soon in one of my other videos, and until then, bye bye.